Job applications in the public sector versus the private sector. Thank you so much for this comment. I really appreciate it. This is the conversation that I don't have enough. And this is simply because I do not have a lot of experience when it comes to applying for jobs in the government sector. And now that you're talking about it, I just realized that I've not applied for the government post for a very, very long time. Okay. I've never been interested in working for the government actually. But let's get to what is the difference between applying for a job in the public sector versus the government sectors. Because you mentioned that I keep on removing things that are required, right? First of all, we need to understand that applying for the job in the government sector is not the same as applying for a job in the private sector in South Africa, right? And this is mainly because in the government sector, one, you will use the Z83 form, which actually collects all of your personal information, right? And then in the private sector, your priority is first of all the ATS systems, because we know that a lot of companies are actually using these ATS systems, right? So the first thing you need to prioritize is making sure that your CV gets through the ATS system, right? The second thing that you need to write for in the private sector is to write for human eyes. But in the government sector, because most of the CVs in the government sectors, they are going to be handled by human beings, you just have to make sure that your CV and your Z83 forms are talking the same language, okay? So, of course, in the government sector, you really need to prioritize writing for human eyes. You're not trying to beat the ATS systems, having like a lot of keywords and all of those things that, we do in terms of prioritizing ATS, right? So you need to write with clarity. You really need to tailor make your CV again for the job posting that you're applying for, just to make sure that you're qualified for that job. But I've actually gone through the Z83 this morning. I've not even gone through that form for years, okay? But if you look at the Z83 form, it also specifically says do not repeat. If you have written your experience in your CV, you don't have to fill it on the Z83 form, but it really requires all your personal details like your ID numbers, but it doesn't require your home address. Actually, I'm looking at it right now, right? So here's the sections that they require. Of course, they will want the advertised job post, the details of the advertised job post, and then they just want your name, your surname, your date of birth, your ID number, your race, your gender, whether you have a disability, whether you are a South African citizen, and if you have a valid work permit, and if you have ever been convicted of a crime, or have been dismissed by an employer, and the registration of the professional bodies, of course, like if you're a healthcare professional, the HPCSA, stuff like that. And then how do we contact you? This is where you put your phone numbers and your email address, right? And then from there, they have language proficiency, and then moving on from your qualifications and your work experience and your references. They specifically say, please ignore if you have actually added this on your CV. So in the government job posting, they want you to actually have references, right? Then the question comes back to the POPI Act that we've been talking about, to say now, if the government requires this, should you be attaching your written consent? Because that is now the question, because the POPI Act has become a thing. You can't just be sharing people's personal information, right? So then let's answer the question. The CVs that I write, will the CV that I write for you that is prioritized for the ATS system actually help you land a job in the government sector? The answer is yes. Why? Because it actually has all the information that is required by the government, except that you do not add your ID number on your CV, right? Because you're going to fill those personal details on the Z83 form, you do not need to actually repeat your personal details like your ID numbers and all of that. You can add simple contact details on your CV and leave it at that, and then add your references on the Z83 form if you're applying into the government sector, and not add it on your CV, right? I hope I have answered your question, and thank you so much for leaving this comment. I appreciate these kinds of comments.